Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Treasure Inside website, both to look at the typo clues as well as to see if there's anything else that we can pull from there. Now, one thing that I kind of started with this one was just looking at the website in of itself and seeing if there's anything that could be something. The first thing that came to mind was the background map. Like, what if that was a map to something? I, again, come from using technology, enjoying technology, and knowing that the author has like Bitcoins and other things there. I feel like there has to be some sort of, I don't know, online URL, some sort of technological like clue or part of one of these treasures. I could be totally off on that, but in any case, I thought, well, what if? So I went in and just kind of looked at the map and found that it is London. At least I'm pretty positive it is. You can kind of see here. I have it outlined over it. So let me just kind of, you can see there. Now, what does this mean? Probably nothing. Probably just used a map that was cool looking, but means nothing, just in the sense that this should be in the United States, as it says in the rules. So unless he's breaking his own rules, it's probably just there to have a map, and that makes sense. Who knows? Maybe someone has a solve that includes London. Here's something that might help. I don't know. But in any case, the one thing I do know that will help is this bottom portion here. There is this, my book has typos. Are there clues? And based off of what he has in there, there are some very helpful things, or rather, it shows that some things are not clues. And there's a couple of things that I think shows they are, or they are intentional. So we'll take a look in this video about it. One thing that I wanted to do with this is to kind of keep an archive. Now, by all means, you could just highlight it and copy it and paste it throughout the, here and there. I wanted to make kind of a web scraping option, or using an import option. So let's go to this spreadsheet, and I have the link here already. And what we're going to look at is import, and this one will use IMPORTXML. Now, there are other ones. Range will let you use other spreadsheets. HTML is if it's in HTML format and has a table or list. And that one, if you want practice on using it, go to Wikipedia and find one that has a table or a list in it. And that'll be good practice to use this one. I haven't used feed much, but that's for RSS or Atom feed. Import data would be if there's a URL that actually goes into a CSV file or a TSV, or tab separated or comma separated format. So we're going to use this one, and let's just get started. So first off, it needs the URL. So I had that URL here, and I'm just going to paste it in. Now, in this, it has to be in quotation marks because that shows this is the URL for this function. Next is the XPath query. Now, for the XPath query, you will need to use the XPath to show what elements you want. You don't really have to understand all of that, but if you want to learn more, you can just look up like XPath query. I think if you use learn more, it can kind of show you some of the different, aspects of that. But let's go back to the Treasure Inside. Then let's go to this, my book has typos. Are these clues? So this is the part or the text that we want to pull. So if you hold Shift and then right click, you'll see this inspect button. When you press that, it'll open up elements here on this website. And you can go up here to the top just to look, and this is HTML, so that could work. Again, there's some websites that you will not be able to use, depending, for example, if there is a passcode that protects it, that wouldn't work. If there's, there are some like anti-data scraping websites and things, so like Reddit or some of those ones, you wouldn't be able to use this. They kind of protect what's on their websites. So, when it works well and is easy. If it doesn't work, could be user error, or most likely something that doesn't allow you to do this. So anyway, let's go. If you kind of highlight some of these elements, you can see here, this would be header 4, which is the, header 1 being the biggest, 4 is level 4. And this one specifically is showing this book has copy. And this right here would be the FAQ answer information that we want. You can see that it highlights all of it. Here, these would just show some of the paragraphs, but this would be what we want. So I'm going to right click, go down to copy, and then copy XPath, since that's what we're using. I'm going to go back here, and this also requires that it is in quotation marks. So I'm going to start with the quotation marks, paste it in, end quotes. You may notice that the FAQs part is black, and what that means is that there's actually quotation marks inside of here. And if there is information in quotes, that's stored as like a text, whereas outside of it, it would be like a cell reference, numbers, things like that. And so you would get an error if you just leave it like this. What you can do in order to get this to actually show the ID being FAQs is a apostrophe on both sides. And then all of this is text, and then it still shows, look for the FAQs in the ID, and then you'll go to the div section, section 13, which should be that information that we want. And the locale will be EN US, which is English in US. I don't think you have to do that, but if there's a website that you're switching language, could be that, or I don't know, maybe sometimes it does. I've been able to do it without it. I just always leave it just to be safe. So hit enter, and array result was not expanded. Oh, okay. So it's saying that in C here, you have to remove some stuff. So let me just take this. It looks like it might be going by the row instead of like up and down in a column like I want. Yeah, so really a transpose function will be able to fix that. Transpose goes from a row to a column or a column to a row, depending on what information's in there. So hit enter, and there we go. We can see it here. The next thing too, there is this kind of white space on there. I don't really want that. And there's a few different ways you could do this. You could use a filter and filter out blank. I myself prefer using the query function. It is one only in Google Sheets. It uses SQL language. So if you're not familiar with it, it's harder than the filter, but I like to use it. It does everything filter does and more. So I'm just going to go ahead and use that. So the query is going to be select column 1, where column 1 is not null. And then the headers, there are no header rows, so I'm just going to have a 0, closes this off, hit enter. In this, we now have this filled out based off of the live website. So this is getting pulled and will update like every 30 minutes to an hour. And if there are any changes, it'll change and update your spreadsheet. Now, if you just leave it like this, I mean, it could work, but like they look pretty much the same, but is there any actual differences? We wouldn't know. You can create some logical functions in another cell, like over here. I might just remove this. You can do equal if C3 equals B3. That's true, so that means that this text is identical. And you could bring that down to C, and all of these are true. Now, for example, let's say something changed, then this will go to false. And so that could be an indicator. And you could add conditional formatting to this if the text is exactly false. You can make it just kind of like a notification, and you can see, well, something changed here. What's going on? What's the change? And in this case, it's actually the word changed. So, do some spaces there, and that changes. So, that's something you can do. There are more things you can do with it. And of course, I just kind of kept going to how I wanted it. So I do have that sheet here. I'm not going to go through everything, but I'll at least show you just in case you're interested in that. So this is kind of what I have. The green meaning that it is live. This is the most up-to-date one. And then this is kind of grayed out archive of older. So, again, right now, these are all the same. I did include the same true false with the exception of I used offset. I used offset so that instead of looking at this specific column and just always looking at it, I could add a new one. And instead, this is going to be looking at B3 one column over. So it's always going to look at C no matter what. So if I add a new column here, it's going to be looking at C instead of D. And you can see here the checks are all false now. So that's kind of one of the ones. My thought was if there was a change in this, I would be able to insert a new column, copy this, paste the values, which means that it will only store the text, not the formula. And then now I can see that those are all true. And this will be my latest one. And I could just put the today's date right there. So I'm going to undo all of that because it is the same since here. It hasn't changed for a couple of weeks now. I also made this with kind of an if statement based off of these true. The first is the web status if this is equal to 0, meaning there are no false. If there is a false, then it's going to be new status change on. So once when there's a change, this is going to, well, change. I'm just going to undo that. And down here, you can see here that this is showing the now. And now is volatile, meaning that any change, if you open the spreadsheet or you make an edit to the spreadsheet, it will change. So for example, if I put a J here and then a J, J, K, K, you can see that that's counting up. So basically the status is just saying there's no changes here. Kind of unnecessary, but useful. The next part is if this does count any false, then we're going to do that now, but I put it in the lambda function. That is an advanced function, and in this case, I'm kind of using it in a not intentional way, but it works for this case. And what this does is actually, when this condition changes, it'll actually take that timestamp and keep it at that point when the function changes. Again, completely unnecessary. Oops. But what happens is then now if I make a change, it will take that new change and it'll keep it. So now if I do this, it's just going to be storing when this change occurred. Now, if there is a second change in the same cell, it's not going to change. However, if there's a new cell that has a new change, then it will switch. And that is because this formula here, counting up, changed. Instead of one false, now there's two falses. So then it'll update to that. So, this does have some restrictions, but for what I'd like for it, it does enough. Really, I don't need those, exact timing either, but why not since we're in here? So all that to say, you might be like, well, what's the point of this? Does this actually help? It might. So far, it hasn't, outside of this one here came out with some pretty big updates. And I wanted to keep an archive just in case some of the wording changes or there are new changes here too. And what I mean by that, and I can share what I think these clues have given us, is this. First off, is from here to here, there was this change. In short, I didn't misspell any words, abbreviations, proper nouns intentionally, nor did I state any incorrect dates or ages on purpose. So that means any of those ones, which at first I was tallying, I was keeping track of all the different misspelled words, thinking these could be clues. Now it's kind of showing that it's not. That said, the wording of this is interesting. One of them that comes to mind is in the Forest Fen chapter. There is the Santa Fe, Arizona, whereas it should be Santa Fe, New Mexico. Now, he didn't technically misspell those, so did he intentionally put the wrong information in there? Maybe. We'll see once when there's a new copy, like the version 2 or 3, to see if those have changed or not, because I think that could be a clue. The other portion of this is that there were some about page numbers. Now here, in page 226, it looked like this kind of unique 225, but kind of like it was pasted 225 and then a 6 was written over it almost. And said it was an overlay issue. I was honestly kind of surprised of that. I thought that was like a clue and I was excited about it. But this helps. I don't have to look into that rabbit hole anymore. And the other portion of this too is that it says all other pages are exactly as they should be. To me, that means there aren't any other mistakes that he made on accident. Page 90 is actually missing. And so that in some way has to be a clue. At least that's how I read this. Again, it could be wrong, but all other pages are exactly where they should be. Tells me, yep, But I purposely omitted page 90 for whatever reason. So again, that's interesting. I might be reading this incorrectly or not, but again, I have found that this has been helpful, and I wanted to keep an archive just in case something was changed. Maybe this gets omitted at some point. I have this copy here that is static and won't change, and I can see what the differences are. And who knows, maybe there's some little differences like that that could actually change the message that people are reading this. So again, this is probably a bit excessive, but someone has to do it, right? Anyway, hopefully you find this helpful. I will leave this in the descriptions. So if you want to make a copy of this, you're more than welcome to. One thing to note, if you do that, and I can just show you what the message looks like, when you make a copy, because I'm using an import function, I am pulling data from another source that is editing this document. And so it does give you a warning, and you have to allow access. You can learn more here too, but all that is causing is this here, the import HTML. You allow access, then this function and formula will work correctly. There are some cases where there's a spreadsheet that has scripts in it that a user uses, and that I would be a little more wary of. I don't have any, so you won't see that message. In any time that you're online getting things, just be cautious. In this case, the import XML is what is making that warning, and you just have to accept it if you want to pull data from there. Again, you don't need to, but that was kind of the purpose of this spreadsheet. Anyway, hopefully you find this helpful. If you had any other clues that came from these tip sections, leave them in the comment. Or if you disagree with what I was saying with the page 90, or you think that's not, correct there, or the force ven or anything else, I, again, think there's a lot that can be taken from this, and maybe some more too from his media presence. So anyway, see you in the next one. Bye now.